I'm gonna start. Assalamu alaikum, everyone. Good afternoon. It's my pleasure to welcome everyone to our Compass program today. And we would like to extend a special welcome to our guest of Compass event, Dr. Qayyim Naoki Yamamoto Hoja, from one of our university members. As a speaker, Yamamoto Hoja is going to talk about reflections of Islamic culture from East Asia through Han-Kitap, Manga, and Tariqa. But firstly, I would like to introduce briefly Yamamoto Hoja to you. He graduated from Doshisha University School of Theology in 2012. He did his master and PhD in Kyoto University Area Studies Department and specialized Islamic thought. After completing the doctoral course in 2018, he started to work at Ibn Khaldun University. His field of study focused on Islamic ethics, tasawwuf, Ottoman tradition, and Islam in Far East. And last year, he founded Sakura Center for Japanese Studies at Ibn Khaldun University. Yamamoto Hojam, today you are going to talk about reflections of Islamic culture from East Asia. But firstly, we would like to know about the reflections from your personal life as a Japanese Muslim. And we are curious about how your interest in tasawwuf started. Could you please share with us?
Yeah, 감사합니다. Thank you very much for introducing me. And my name is Naoki Yamamoto, as I introduced. Oh, by the way, thank you very much for pronouncing my name correctly, because most of the people call me like Yamamoto or Yatomato or like Yado, like Naoki or Nokia or something. It seems that it's really difficult to pronounce. It's not well-known surname in Turkey. So yeah, I'm always struggling, to correct the pronunciation of something. But anyway, but I think this is also implies that the Far East or East Asia is not, how can I say, popular among the Turkish society, because like if I have like a different name, like maybe like it's easier for them to to pronounce this. But it seems that even though the Japan and, for example, like Turkey has like a long history. Actually, we already have like 200 or 300 history of our interaction, but still, like East Asia is not like how can I say, we haven't established the strong like a spiritual bridge like between us. And right now, like alhamdulillah, like I have a chance to work in Turkey as like a lecturer, and now I'm teaching like Islam. And as you asked me, like I think I need to start that why now I'm studying tasawwuf. Eventually, it also means like why I choose to become Muslim. But many people ask this question actually, like why did you become Muslim, or why did you choose Islam? Especially to the Muslim converts. But lately I didn't mean anything, but I humbly declined this kind of offer. When the people wants to make some kind of program of the like new Muslim converts or the story of the conversion to Islam, because becoming Muslim is just a point. It's just a point of a long history. And what is actually challenging for us is not is not just becoming a Muslim, but keeping our Muslim identity. Right? For example, like when I become Muslim, there actually many people celebrate me. Alhamdulillah, all of your sins like got like erased, and now you're really newborn, and now we are brothers and sisters. Alhamdulillah. But then bye bye. Like most of the people they are not interested in me, and after that. But actually, this is just a starting point. Like what the difficulties or challenges or the happiness or like everything starts when you choose the Lord of Islam. And that's why like nowadays, like I'm not sharing my story of conversion, but rather I'm telling that how I'm trying to keep my Muslim identity because like, it's more, how can I say? It is a topic, it's much closer to my heart. And, before becoming Muslim, like I was a Christian because my families were also like a Christian, they were reading Bibles, but they are not that religious. But, when I was in high school, I started thinking about like, the concept or, by the way, and the reason why I'm looking this way, because I don't want to see my faces when I'm talking. So, can you zoom back again? Because you pin me, so as if I'm talking to myself. But the reason why I talk, the reason why, I choose Islam is that before that, I read lots of the books. They are like, the books of Christianities or books about like Buddhism or like the books about like Taoism or like, they are at that time, I was really in confusion. So like, I had some kind of like a concept of the creator or the God, but I didn't know how to practice. Like, I didn't know how I can live as someone who believes in Islam. And I entered the Doshisha University to study the Christianity, but that Doshisha University was a really interesting place. That in this school of theology, which is mainly established for teaching Christianity like Protestant, but they are also the offering the course of Judaism and Islam. And in the first day of the orientation of the school of theology, and I saw one man who has a long beard, and he was wearing like a jalabeya, the Arabic clothes. And when he started to talk, he said "Assalamu alaikum," and this teacher said that he is studying about like critical theology of the Ibn Taymiyyah, and also he's doing the field work with the the Al-Qaeda or like Salafi movement, and that was my first impression about like the Muslim. Like, he is Japanese, but he has like really long beard and talking about like Al-Qaeda or something like, which I only hear in the media. Like at first I thought he might be the supporter of terrorists or something. But so my first impression about Islam is not that good actually. But after entering the Doshisha University, I visited frequently, like the library, and I found one book. That book is titled "It's a Story About the God," and that book really changed my life because that book is still written in really like simple Japanese. It's not like philosophical. It's not about like philosophical like ontologies or like epistemologies or like it's not about like sophisticated social sciences or something. That it just talk about that how we can overcome our own ego and how this ego is actually harming us to lose our way. And before that, maybe I was reading the similar books, but that this is the first time that the words of the book came directly to my heart. And I got interested in the author, so I looked at the back page, and it said that this book is written by the Habiba Nakata Kaori. The Habiba Nakata Kaori. And in that picture, I saw a man next to her. Is that scary looking guy with a beard, who just talked in the orientation. So that time I noticed that he is the husband of this author. So I got shocked that I noticed that he is not the terrorist or something. Like he's the husband of this amazing the author. So I just emailed him that I read this book and I got so amazed, and I want to know more about this kind of topic that is taught in this book. And it seems that this book is based on Islam. Especially, he said that this book is actually the Japanese translation of the Sufi scholar. And what is this concept of Sufi, or the concept of Sufism or something? So I was so excited, and I wrote a long email to him, and he immediately replied to me, and he said he wanted to meet, and I go to the and we met in the restaurant called Papa John's. I don't know this Papa John's is the same Papa John's in Istanbul. It's like a restaurant which selling the cheesecake. Is it the same in Turkey? So
I think it's not the same, hocam.
Oh, okay. So yani böyle yani başka Papajohns yani. It's different Papajohns. But the Professor Hassan was waiting, eating the cheesecake. Yeah, he looks very cute, by the way. And when I sat down, he told me that he is so happy that I got influenced by this book, but unfortunately, his wife has already passed away, like a year ago, and he started to cry, and I got so shocked that that scary beard guy has just exposed his emotions in front of me, but in the end, we just had cheesecake and also the cup of tea. But he told me that there's 3 things that a human being can inherit, according to the Islamic belief. That one is the prayer of the shower, and the second is the sadaqah jariyah, and the third is knowledges. So it means if you inherit someone's knowledge, your life is not only your life, that your life becomes someone's life, and this someone's life is also inherited by the ancestors' life. So he said, now I see my wife in your heart. And this is my first encounter of Islam, I can say. That it's not my encounter with Islam is not about God or not about the Prophet, but importance of inheriting the knowledges, the importance of inheriting the emotions, the importance of the silsila, the human connection through generation. And this is how actually he said that we all need to inherit the knowledge of the Prophet Muhammad. And this Prophet Muhammad, he gained this reality or the knowledges with the revelations of Allah. So this is how the world is connected to each other. And Professor Hassan also said that this is the only way that we can overcome our own ego. So that's why this is how he goes back to the topic of this book. Now I really wanted to meet his wife, because that book changed my life, but I couldn't meet. But as long as I inherit this knowledge of this book, or as long as I remember her name, as long as I remember her stories, her life manifest in my with my tongue, in my eyes, or in my voice, or in my knowledge, with the connection with the knowledges. So and fortunately, his name is called Professor Hassan. He said, the Professor Hassan said, then now I will become your sensei. And so this is the so my Islamic endeavor start with the relationship of the sensei and the student. Sensei means teacher, but I think it's much the Turkish word hoca is much closer. This is not like a lecture in the high schools or lecture in the university. It's a lifelong journey with some kind of master. So, and it's really amazing that he brought me to so many places. We visited Indonesia and Malaysia and Dubai. We eat a really expensive peanut actually in Dubai. It's it's $30 or something. I'm sure we get deceived. And we also visited Syria, before the war. And most importantly, we visited Egypt, together. So in this way, during this travel, Professor Hassan told me one thing, that, in every country, you see the different manifestation of Islam. When we visit Malaysia, we see the different, the cultures, or different understanding or different interpretation of Islam. And when you visit Indonesia, well, Syria is also the same. And when we visit Egypt, we also see sometimes completely different picture of the manifestation of Islamic culture. So he said, so he told me one thing, that Islam is one, but this one creates the diversity. And actually, he said that this diversity only generates from this oneness of the reality. And not only he taught me through books or through lectures, but he taught me with the experiences. He taught me with the journey. So the second keyword is this journey, like I said. And when I was in Egypt, I studied like basic Arabic there. Like I studied like classical Arabic, like beginner one, and also I studied some of the Egyptian Arabic, but I completely forgot Egyptian Arabic. I only remember like Isaiah, is okay, like Isaiah or Marish or I don't know, like always something or like, but I don't know, like I only used Husfa, when I was in Cairo. Yeah, but it was really a good moment because the Egyptian people is the how can I say? They are so different, and the way they see the life or the way they create the society is completely different from that of the Japanese. Because like we Japanese, like even you can see my face, it's obvious that we are so depressive, and we are not, the good one to express our own emotions. The many students, actually they complain about me that I never show my emotion in their faces, but Egyptians, they always laugh and they always they don't hesitate to show the emotions. They don't hesitate to show the mahabba, the loves or intimacy, towards human beings. And I made some like Egyptian friend, and I asked them that why Egyptian people are so emotional or why they're so human loving people. And he said that actually this love comes from the Prophet Muhammad. So this is how I experienced that, this whole, how can I say, the world is based on the belief towards Allah, and also the love. This love is the manifestation of this manifestation of the iman of the Prophet. And even now, like in Middle East, have lots of problems, but I still see this trace of the love of the Prophet Muhammad whenever I go, even how the university, I always see these traces. And I had a chance to meet some of the teachers of the Azhar University, and the Professor Hassan was also there. And we are having a dinner, I think during Ramadan, I think. And suddenly he asked me that, why did you become Muslim? Because now Professor Hassan is there, and the one Egyptian there. Now these two people who can be hear my shahada. So it's so, and I didn't have strong reason to reject. So that's why I just said yeah, okay, then I will become. So this is the point I became Muslim. So many people tell the story about conversion to Islam is kind of dramatic things, or it's done. I don't know. It's a kind of the Korean movie or something. But I didn't have that kind of special experience. I just my teacher just offered me the chance, and I just say okay. And later, I think it was during the Ramadan, so that's why when I coming back home, Muslim. There was a gatekeeper in the building where I was staying, and he was doing an iftar, and he was eating the I think cucumber or something. He was eating cucumber, and when he noticed, I noticed him, so I said assalamu alaikum, because now I become Muslim, so I just used my first assalamu alaikum to the gatekeeper, and he said, oh, assalamu alaikum, tafaddal, and he just tried. He was just eating this cucumber, and he just offered me that cucumber he was eating. And this kind of moment I never experienced in Japan, but still I feel that mahabba from this gatekeeper, but I didn't eat the cucumber, I think, and Professor Hassan had that cucumber, I think, because I was not that hungry at the time. And then and after the visiting Egypt, I came back to Japan. But as I said, the real challenge start, when I start living in non-Muslim country, because in Japan, unfortunately, I think the population of Muslim is 0.001% or something. We are much closer to the non-existence, and we don't have any social infrastructure to support the Muslim community, and even for foreign Muslim. Immigrants in Japan, they don't actually they don't have enough the power to support each other well, like let alone for like Japanese Muslim converts. Like in Kyoto, like, the only Japanese Muslim converts are this Professor Hassan Sensei and me. And I heard there's also some of the Japanese Muslims, but they are mostly, they are become Muslims through the marriages with the Muslim immigrants. And, they are not open to the other communities. So it's really difficult to access. So, and when I get back to Japan, actually, am I talking the topic that what I'm asked? I think we are not going off the topic, right?
No, it's okay.
Okay.
So your story.
Yeah, so when I become Muslim, I know, so yeah, I wanted to have potato chips, like potato chips. So I went to the grocery store and I bought potato chips. It was the my most favorite potato chips. But I remember the word that Professor Hassan was saying that there is like halal or haram and something like food in Islam. So I just got curious and I just checked the ingredients, and that potato chips is actually, it's the like fish flavored potato chips, but it contains like pork something or something like the pork X or pork source. So I found out that, so when I became Muslim, I didn't think carefully that I cannot eat my most favorite potato chips until the end of my life. And also I checked the another like snack as well. I think it was like a chocolate cake or something from the grocery store. It also contains like alcohol. And when I go to the restaurant, I would just order the salad and I was eating it. And I just noticed it contains ham, like pork meat, ham. So yeah, I didn't know what to do because my ham is already in my mouth and actually I'm already sort of swallowing it. So I think at the time I just swallowed it. Like I stuck with them. Years been there. I ask Allah for forgiveness. But this is how, like, even just, I always take everything for granted. But when the conversion to Islam is actually abandoning my ordinary life, and not just like ideological, like in a conversion, but my whole life has changed. And I asked my sensei or any other friends that, I didn't expect this kind of change to happen in my life. And he said, I mean, yeah, you would get used to it. And yeah, but at the time, I was still new Muslim, so I didn't know even how to pray. So I just watched some YouTube, and also I was just imitating the Professor Hassan was doing. And later, I started to learn, there is some kind of like a mazhab, the Muslim community, but still, like, it has a limit. Because, actually for the Muslim converts, I know, many Muslim converts are sharing their lives or they're sharing their knowledges in the YouTube or TikTok or Instagram or something. But if you want to keep the Muslim identity, you need a systematic knowledge. You need a good education. Otherwise, you will ended up in you will ended up radicalize yourself, or you start to doubt everything. And so, and I consulted with my sensei that I want to study like this Islamic knowledges. I want to study like Islamic sciences somewhere, and I found some option. I found some scholarship of the Kuwait, and I have some scholarship in Syria, and I was planning to like apply for that, the scholarship, and then at the time there was the international conference in Doshicha University. It's about the about the civilizations, or like comparative study of civilizations, or something, I think. And the one Turkish scholar attended this conference, and he talked about like açık medeniyet, like open civilization, and how and the multiplex and the understanding of this world, and how the Muslim civilization actually kept this diversity. So yeah, I thought, oh my God, this, I found this like a cool scholar. So like, so Professor Hassan and I, went to him, and I'm sure you can expect that his name was Professor Recep Şentürk, and this is my first encounter with the Turkish, I think, and I said that I want to study somewhere like in the Middle East, or even Malaysia is also fine, but I haven't got accepted. And this Recep Hoca said to me that, Osman, come to Istanbul, he said. But my image, actually, this most of the Japanese people think that Turkey is like a super hyper, like a secular country, and there is no Islamic culture or something. Like, the only thing they know is a kebab and the belly dance. So this is also what I have in mind. And how come the opportunity to study Islamic sciences and the country of the belly dance connect each other? So, and as far as I study, they are not even speaking Arabic. I think they're speaking Turkish or something. But at that time, also I don't know why, but I didn't reject. I somehow I said, okay, I will go to Turkey, and so this is I think the second big change in my life. So, and I came to Istanbul, and I studied in the educational institute called İSAR, the Istanbul Araştırma ve Eğitim Vakfı, I think. It was the early period of İSAR, and I stayed with the Turkish students in the dormitory, and and this İSAR Vakfı, they are offering the Arabic educations, and also the Islamic sciences, and also the Western sciences as well. They are trying to create some kind of new alternatives towards the Western sciences, and and that was quite shocking to me, because I didn't see any belly dancing in Üsküdar. What I only see is sincere students, who trying to rediscover the potential of Islamic heritage in the Ottoman Empire. And also I found that there are so many Syrian refugees. Actually, they are refugees, but and there are so many ulamas and the students of the Yemen, and these Turkish students and the Syrian teachers are helping each other to seek some of the truth. And and at the time, and at the time I remember, I saw this kind of similar scenes from my childhood. And this is where I remember, the manga, Japanese manga, Japanese comic book, because I will talk about this later, but in Japanese comic book, the big theme is about the sensei, teacher, and the students who are trying to seek the truth. And when I started to study in this educational institute, Vakuf, I see some kind of real scene of this manga, sensei and students are trying to help each other, and and they are connected with the kind of relationship of love, the mahabba or muhabbat, and yeah. So it seems this is the first time I started to think that the Islam. I must not call this Islamic heritage. Actually, this tradition still lives until today, and actually, these Turkish people, they're keeping their own tradition more than the Japanese do in some ways. But studying Turkish was really difficult for me, because I got my education in Japanese and mostly English, and I never experienced kind of a language, a foreign language, which is grammatically similar to the Japanese. So I really struggle. It even takes 2 months to master this bir tanesi alabilir miyim? Because for Japanese, we cannot distinguish the differences of sound of the ra and l, r and l sound, and just check alabilir miyim, kaç tane el ve ra var. So every day, I try to pronounce this bir tanesi alabilir miyim, but the hoca in the language school, they always say, oh, yanlış söylüyorsun, yanlış söylüyorsun. So I got so desperate at the time, I remember. And also it takes at least 3 months to start to understand the Turkish conversation. So I don't know right now how many international students are attending this webinar, but just don't give up. I'm sure in someday you will start to understand the Turkish conversation. So, all right, and also I found out that the city of the Istanbul itself contains a lot of diversity. I was living in Üsküdar, but the language school itself was located in the Kadıköy, and then it was moved to the Taksim. But so I was living in Üsküdar, and every day I walked to the Kadıköy. But when I crossed the bridge of the Kadıköy, it seems like I entered a completely different world. Üsküdar is more like a traditional city, but when I go to the Kadıköy, I feel I don't know, it feels like some part of modern Tokyo something, the atmosphere lives there. And with the perspective of the people is also different. The understanding of the life or the lifestyle or the So I learned that the Istanbul is somehow contains the completely different cultures and understanding or religion, but still they keep the form as one city. And when I go to different district, I met lots of Uyghur students, and when I go to the Fadi district, I met lots of Syrian friends, and this is really shocking for Japanese as Japanese, because I don't know how many people visited Japan, but Japan is almost this is homogenic society. You can only encounter with Japanese like me, the East Asians. So even in Tokyo, Tokyo is one of the most international cities in the world, but it's really hard to find this kind of diversity. But but Istanbul, they don't even. I met some of the Syrian friends who don't even speak Turkish. They're just focusing on Islamic sciences, but they're living in Istanbul for several years, 5 years or 6 years. But yet, they can live and I don't know. I'm really curious that how these traditions were created, because we East Asians, I think somehow we forgot this kind of, I don't say, intellectual muscles to keep this diversity. So, and these experiences will help me to establish my own Muslim identity. And this is, I think, I couldn't get it if I was living in Japan alone. Because if I live in alone, my only source of knowledge is Hassan Sensei or any other some of the Muslim students from foreign countries, and mostly I was getting my knowledge through books. But here and Turkish student told me the one important keyword is called sohbet, sohbet. And sohbet is been being together, and this a companionship is the only way that you can digest experiences and build a Muslim character. This is what I learned when I'm staying in Istanbul. Then I went back to Japan, and I entered the MA course and PhD course of the Kyoto University, and I finished my PhD a few years ago, and then I got a chance to work in Turkey. And this is up to the present. But I found that, so Istanbul is not it's not only a place for me to just work, but this is a place I, nurtured my identity as Muslim, or my identity, or even my identity as Japanese Muslims. So, yeah. So, but if I summarize my my story of the conversion to Islam, there are always important teachers who guide me to the right directions, and this is really important, I think, because we can never learn something from just the books or Wikipedia or YouTube or TikTok. TikTok is just 15 seconds; you cannot learn anything, and it's not only myself, but I think the other Japanese Muslim converts also need this environment, this tangible community. So right now, I'm also becoming old. I'm 31 years old, so I have some Japanese students. But what am I trying to do is that I also trying to inherit this Turkish Islamic culture, like a sohbet or futubet or isar, everything I experienced in this Istanbul, the keeping this tangible community, not judging others, trying to keep in touch, every second. Before coming to Istanbul, I never used WhatsApp, but right now I'm using WhatsApp for almost every hour, every second. That we are always communicating. So I think I eventually now I'm acquiring this Turkish muhabbet in my heart as well, and this is what the Japanese Japanese Muslims also need, because the Japanese society itself is really secularized and atomized a super individualistic society. So they always feel alone. And if you choose Muslim, you become more alone, because you are already you are already living individually, But if you choose as being Muslim, then you are not like 100% Japanese anymore, but you are also not like a foreign-born Muslim because you're Muslim converts and also you are Japanese. So the Muslim, this is the challenges of the Japanese Muslim converts, like that they will become like in Arabic calls like a graba, gurbet. Like they will become in the condition of gurbet, like nowhere, no matter where they go. And in that, so like now now I had a chance to help in like the Japanese students, but this is what I'm doing. Like I'm also trying to inherit this so-called like Turkish Islamic culture, so that the Japanese Muslim community can also establish their own like a community. So yeah, this is maybe the summary of my life so far.
Yeah, thank you, Hocam. Yeah, you do have attention to inherited knowledge, connection to others. In this sense, how East Asian Muslims connect to Islamic heritage? Could you please share and illuminate us about Islamic culture in East Asia? Does Asia has a special Islamic tradition or story like this? And also, I would like to add my third question together. I want to combine them. Why Han-Kitap and Manga? What is the relationship with these concepts between Tasawwuf? Could you please illuminate us, Hocam?
Yeah, first of all, if you want to know the detail of my this whole plan, please register my Japanese course of the Harvard University. I'm sure it will open in the next semester as well. But I'm going to stop advertising myself. But I think the Islamic heritage of East Asia is the little bit sensitive issues because, for example, like Japan is a really unique country which didn't have any intellectual interaction with the Islamic civilization. Like almost all the continents or the countries or region have some kind of relationship with the Islamic civilization, but Japan is almost you cannot find any trace of it. And I think the strong relationship starts after the Second World War. I think during the Meiji the Meiji period, the 20th century, we had some kind of interact with the Muslim in China, but you also have like a dark history of our colonialism. So it seems that during this 20th century, we have so-called the first generation of the Japanese Muslim, but most of these Japanese Muslims are just agent, the spy of the Japanese government. Like they become Muslim to collect information from the Muslim to achieve the idea of like Japanese empire. So it's really difficult to take a lesson from this first generation, but as the East Asia, actually the East Asia has one of the oldest like Islamic history, which is comparable to the other region as well. For example, like the Han Muslim, Chinese Muslims. Like it seems that this Chinese Muslim community existed like during even the 7th century or 8th century. Like there is a legend that the Sahaba like came to this Chinese region. And actually, I'm not sure if this is like a true historical truth or not. But there is evidence that Muslims were there even like 8th century, and they are not only like a residents of this like a Chinese like the dynasty, but they are one of the best like intellectual in this like a Chinese civilization. And one of the proof of this history, this is called Han-Kitap. The Han means like a Chinese, and Kitab is a Kitab. This is also an important keyword. Like if you go to the Muslim country, whenever you go, there is a word Kitab. For example, in Turkish as well, you call book as Kitab, right? And Indonesia is also same. They call a book as Kitab. Malaysia is also Kitab, and and the other region is also Kitab. So I personally call Islamic civilization is like a Kitab civilization because this shows that how important the knowledge is in our community. But this Han-Kitap is the Chinese Islamic classic. Chinese Islamic classic is talk about like Islamic like a creed or like a fiqh or the tasawwuf written in Chinese character. And if you want to know about detail, please register our Center for Japanese Studies, because one of our lecturer, the Elvida Unarokoja, is giving a lecture about this Chinese Islamic history. But this is, when I found this one, I got so shocked, because before that, I was imagining that, the Islam is Islamic traditions is living in so-called like Middle Eastern area or like Southeast area or something like that. For me, this means like Islam is still like alien to the East Asian. But I found that actually the one with all this Islamic heritage is live in the East Asian civilization in the form of this Han-Kitap. And when I read book, as Japanese, right now the Chinese and Japanese are still using the Chinese character, the kanji. And the Koreans, they create their own alphabet, but lots of vocabularies are from the Chinese character as well. So, for even the modern Japanese, since Japanese are still using the classical, Chinese character, I could pick some of the words even before studying the Chinese classic grammar. And I found lots of Buddhist vocabulary or Taoist vocabulary or Confucian vocabulary, but they explain this concept in the form of Islam. They keep their own Aqidah, but they try to show that actually Islam is the best manifestation of the East Asian tradition. And, and this is the moment I have started to think that before that, I was thinking that, the converting to Islam is that just learning Islam from outside of our own civilization. It means like, there is always an ancestor in Turkey, or so like converting or learning Islam is somehow, I think, that Arabizing myself or Turkishizing myself, like Turkleştirmek or something, or like, just become like Indonesian or Malaysian. But I found that actually we can be an East Asian while keeping this Muslim identity. Actually, we can be the part of this intellectual tradition, this Islamic tradition. So I found, so this, and I'm still working on the studying this, Chinese Han-Kitap, and I'm learning a lot as a Muslim. And another thing, this manga has, this completely like new challenges for me. Like for Japanese, as I told you, like Japanese knows nothing about Islam. Like when I was like 20 years old, like if I see someone who has beard and talk about Ibn Taymiyyah, like it means just like a terrorist or something like that. Because most of the Japanese are influenced by the westernized media. So they don't know how to access like, spiritual aspect of the Islamic civilization. And, but as I said, when I was staying in the educational wakaf in Istanbul, I remember, the scene of the manga, this sensei and the students. And then when I started to read the manga again, like, this is one of my favorites, like Naruto. Yeah, I started to feel that this sensei of Naruto is kind of like a shuyukh of, the Tasawwuf literature when I was reading. And also when I started to read the Tasawwuf book, I started to feel that this Jiraiya ninja sensei was in this Tasawwuf literature. And at first I thought I got crazy because I was writing the PhD thesis for 24 hours a day. And maybe I was too tired, but the more I read, the more convinced I got, because there is, even though we don't have like a direct interaction with the Islamic civilization, we share some of these spiritual values. And I talked with the one of the editor of the Shu Asia publisher. And this is a publisher of publishing the Naruto or the manga Japanese comic book, and he also liked this idea. So I started the essay project. It's called Introduction to Tasawwuf Through Manga, and this one is I'm quoting some of the important scenes from the shonen manga, And I'm explaining the major concept of the tasawwuf, like tawbah, or in Turkish we call tövbe or tövbe, I don't know. Like the importance of repentance, or the importance of like isar. Isar means like sacrifice yourself to serve the others, or importance of the sheikh and the murid, and also the importance of the futuwat. And I believe that this is not only this is important not only for Japanese reader, but I think it's for the Turkish students as well, because I had an interview with some kind of agency, I think, and I talked some of the concept of futuwa, because one of the journalists, some of the journalists, they got interested what I was studying, and during this interview, I said, I'm studying about the futuwa, and the journalist asked me, what is the meaning of futuwa? And I said, futuwa means like yitlik. And the journalist asked me again, what is the meaning of yitlik? And I said, this is kind of philosophy of ahilik. And the journalist asked me again, what is the meaning of ahilik? So it means, so I found out that actually the word futuwa is almost got forgotten in this Turkish society, even though this was one of the most important value in the Muslim community. So I believe that this kind of rediscovering the Islamic heritage in East Asia, and also trying to discover some similarity in the Japanese tradition will create a spiritual bridge between Japan and also the Muslim countries. And in this way, the Japanese readers can study in Islamic culture while using their own cultural backgrounds. And also in Muslim community, they can rediscover, the values of their own heritage, while, getting know the other culture. Anyway, so this is, what I think about manga.
That's so important, Hojam. Thank you. And also, we are curious about what Tariqa is, because you have a kind of concept and link the Tariqa between the tasawwuf too. Why did you point out these traditions?
Oh, this is also, I just happened to notice that. By the way, the word Tariqa is the term I invented, and usually they call it like tea ceremony in English. Yeah, tea ceremony. But but I think tea ceremony somehow doesn't grasp the essence of this tea tradition, because tea ceremony looks like a wedding party, they're just drinking tea, while they're having fun. But we are not doing this for fun. This tea ceremony in Japan is called sado. Sado. Sa comes from cha, and cha comes from chai. Chai. It's tea. And do means path. Path. In Turkish, yod. So that's why I thought, yeah, I can translate maybe tea Tariqa could be more proper to call this tradition. Why? Because this is one of the old, the practice of, the Zen Buddhism. But later on, it becomes part of the culture of the samurais. It became beyond, these religious practices. And, this is, the Yerpaze, the fan. Yeah. And this is the sign of the every masters of my school. So this is also the silsila. So these tea masters, they are not just sipping tea. They are not the master of drinking tea. They are master of serving tea, and this serving tea is a symbol of the isar. And also this is the practice of the khidmah, the service, and also this is the practice of the mahabba, or the humanity, and and also the practice of tea is not also have philosophical dimensions. This tea cup itself is somehow where it's like a microcosmos, like do you know the Turkish poem Hoşça bak zatına kim in Alemsin singing? Like, it means like yourself is actually the macrocosmos. Is macrocosmos is also the microcosmos. So here, like I embody as macrocosmos, and this is microcosmos, and every time before using the teacup or the other tea tools, like we wipe the tool with the handkerchief, and this is the symbol that every like a creatures like kainat needs a purification, like aptes. So my tea master, like I was studying tea, for several years, and this she told me that when I wiping the tea, is actually this microcosmos is purifying himself, and if you can purify this microcosmos, you can also purify this heart. So this tea tariqa is actually the practice of the seyr suluk or tazkiyat al-nafs in the tasawwuf literature. And people might think that this is not since this is like traditions of the East Asia, like it might not suitable for Muslim to practices. But when I was practicing, my master told me really interesting. Like today, I don't have enough time, so I cannot show you from the very beginning. But when we use the tea handkerchiefs, there's a moment that we use one finger and we point it out, and then we enclose the handkerchiefs like this. And my tea master told me that this symbolized the oneness of the universe. So in this tea ceremony, not the polytheistic like ideologies, or not, I don't know, like modern like philosophy, but this oneness is a keyword of the whole practice of this tea ceremony. So that's why this is not like a tea party of the like Donald Trump or something. Like this is a really sincere, like spiritual practice to seek a oneness. And so this is like so I'm trying to create that maybe like if we can reinterpret this tradition from the Islamic perspective, this might also help like Japanese readers to access like both the Islamic heritage and also the Japanese culture.
So my questions end here, Hojam. And thank you very much for enlightening us with your inspiring perspective and experiences. And I believe it's important to hear these reflections from you personally, because you had a lot of journey in East Asia, also in other part of the world countries, and you experience and observe an East Asian Islamic tradition, also other Islamic traditions, and you're also conducting spatial studies on East Asian Muslims too. In this sense, your vision and your perspective is really valuable for us. Thank you for sharing us. So we can continue with questions if our participants have questions. Now you can write your questions in the chat sections. By the way, if you have add something, Hojam, you can say and add.
Okay, then let's advertise our center.
Yeah. Also, you founded a Sakura Center for Japanese Studies at Ibn Khaldun University, right? Last year. So if anyone interested more East Asian culture, they can follow these events in Sakura Center, Sakura Japanese Center. And you can talk about the center or your studies on center, Hojam, also.
Yeah, so right now, this center is offering several courses, several webinar through Zoom. For example, Erbila Hoja, as I said, she is giving a lecture of this Chinese Islamic history. And also we have the teacher called like Setting Özdemir Hoja, and she is giving the history of the Japanese art. So if you can follow the Setting Sense lecture too, then you can also know the concept of the philosophy of this tea ceremony too. And I think somebody asked me, I think Usman-san, like he's talking about this comic tasawwur book. It will be published this year or maybe next year in Japan. So first you need to study Japanese, or maybe I can translate into other languages. But as I told you, Japanese is important. Like you can study Japanese. You can even study Japanese in even Harvard University. So yeah, you can register the course. But I think this is really important. Important point I think is what I meant is that right now I'm talking in English, but we also need to keep our diversity in academia as well. But then when I have studied Turkey, I noticed one thing that I'm repeating this story like again and again, but many students ask me, and when I talk about East Asians, or when I talk about even like Tasawwuf or something, like they ask, is there English translation word? The İngilizce tercümesi var mı? And of course I don't know, because I'm Japanese. I never studied Japanese history through English. But I think this is kind of like the dominant atmosphere that somehow the people think that if you want to access to the first class, the high quality academic inquiry, you have to do English. And this is not the case. For example, like when I went to Washington, D.C., I never feel the trace of this Naruto spirituality in that city. Or when I speak in English, I never feel it. But I experienced so much interesting things in Istanbul, and I learned so many vocabulary which I cannot translate into English, but I can translate into Japanese. So sometimes Turkish is not sometimes, often the Turkish is the best language to translate the concept of Japanese culture into Turkish. So that's why I think we as Japanese not Japanese intellectuals, like Muslim intellectuals, like we need to study as much language as possible. Like for example, if you want to study about Korea, like don't just access to the English translation or like the English articles. You need to access the original languages. Or if you want to study about Japanese, like just don't access to the just don't Google some like Japanese center in Washington, D.C. or Japanese New York, but the true knowledge is not there. The true experiences, like tangible, like raw knowledges, are in the local heritages. And so this is why no matter teacher, mock my Japanese accent in Turkish, I always try to speak Turkish. Her zaman Türkçe konuşmaya çalışıyorum yani. Because I believe that there are so many expressions that I can only express in Turkish, especially when it comes to the important topic of Japanese culture, or the topic in Turkey. So right now we are given as the East Asian language course. We have the Japanese course and Chinese course, but we should also open the Korean language class as well, and maybe like Urdu languages or Indonesian, Bahasa Indonesia, or Malaysians, or like Hindus, or like almost we should have everything. We should embody everything, because before this seminar, I was giving a lecture in the graduate school, and I introduced one book, Hawdra Hayat. This is a Persian book, which is written by the Sufi scholar, and this book is about the yoga. The yoga, the Hindu practices, and it seems that this is one of the first book which is written about the yoga, which talk about the yoga. Like not the yoga Hindu scholar, but the Muslim scholar wrote the first book about yoga. Don't you think this is amazing? Like Muslim intellectual was the first one who noticed that, who systematically described the concept or the practice of Hinduism. And right now, what we are thinking now, we are just accessing, we are asking, is there English translation of it? Because before the modernization, I'm sure the other people outside of Islamic civilization, I'm sure they are asking that is there Arabic translation of it? Because at the time, Arabic translation of the intellectual inquiries are the best quality. And we should also revive the tradition, not on for the Turkish academia as well, but also the Japanese academia as well, because Japan is also falling into the same situation right now. People who can talk the English is respected, and the people who can only access the Japanese Japanese references are somehow they think backwards in Turkish geri kaldık gibi. But this is not the case. The most important thing is to embody this diversity, within our body and the soul and the spirit.
We don't have any other. Do we have? Hocam, we have another one. Osman Mesud is asking. I just was wondering if Kung Fu Panda is shaped in Japan. It has also inner peace as one of its central themes, demiş.
Kung Fu Panda mı?
Kung Fu Panda
biliyor musun sen?
I know, but I just watched a kind of movie, Kung Fu Panda movie.
Yeah, it's movie. Yeah, it's movie. It's animation. I think Kung Fu Panda is about China.
Yeah,
because it's Kung Fu.
Common concept maybe is Asia have because of this.
Yeah, it's showing somewhere in East Asian values, I think. Yeah, and actually, I don't know anybody who watched the Star Wars as well, but the original sequel of the Star Wars is also based on the East Asian cultures. This the relationship between the master and disciples, and also this lightsaber sword battle, is also based on the samurai, the katana sword. So, from episode 4 until episode 6, the old series. So yeah, we are surrounded by a lot of East Asian the cultures, without noticing it. But right now, especially the Korea and China is now economically developing, so it becomes more and more visible. So we need to get hurry. Otherwise, we are losing a big chance. Not just chance, but we if we don't know enough about this region, then we will get consumed by the superpowers. So in this way, it's also important for Muslim intellectual to acquire open-minded perspective to the other cultures.
We don't have any other question, Hocam. So thank you again. And well, our compass today took us quite far east. However, it felt just close when it came to shared values and virtues. Well, thank you everyone for participating to Compass program today. See you next series, inshallah. Thank you very much, Hocam, again.
Well, thank you very much. Maybe I should talk about a Korean movie star in the next Compass session. Maybe I can get more.
Maybe.
Thank you. All right, thank you very much for attending, and also thank you very much for the moderators of the 감사합니다. 감사합니다.
감사합니다.
네, 감사합니다. 안녕하세요.
아리가토, sense.
전물은 맛있어요.